everyone, I'm Amanda. This is our AI Launchpad webinar series. And today we're doing a very practical, hands-on approach to lesson planning with ChatGPT. And so we're very excited to have you all here. I would love, if you've been here with us before or this is your first time, I know I can't see everybody, but you're here with me. Absolutely. Keep an eye on the chat. And so I want to make sure that you're using the Q&A like I see right now. So good to see, I know Paul and like others that have joined. It's so good. And Jeff is here and people that I know, but also people from all over the world. I already see Egypt. These are your peers. If you are here right now, you are most likely an early adopter and someone that's open and interested in ChatGPT and other generative AI tools. So make sure to share, speak, talk, provide resources because it's going to be pretty amazing. I also want you to prompt with us today. This is a very interactive session. And so if you have ChatGPT, please open it. If you don't, this is a great time to actually go and create a very simple login. Make sure you're using ChatGPT though from OpenAI, because I know there are a lot of different options. And then also let's just have a good time. Like I already love how see everyone. We've got people from literally all over the world. Look, from Gabriel's from Nigeria. We have someone from Glasgow. I'm in New York City. And so just really excited to be here with you guys today. This is part of our Launchpad series. So we've done everything from rethinking cheating in the age of AI to talking to high school students about their experience. We have a couple coming up and we'll continue to add to these. So we have strategies for implementing AI at your school. If you're a school leader, we have Bridging the Digital Divide with Philippa Hardman, who's from the UK. We have introducing AI to students. We actually have a curriculum that we're launching on that one. And everything from teacher perspectives to responsible AI. So please join us. If you enjoy this, we'll have a recording at the end that we'll share tomorrow, but please get involved. So let's get started. We have a poll for you all that Dan's gonna, who is my co-founder, is going to be sharing right now to get an idea of who you are, how familiar you are with ChatGPT, but also how much do you spend time on lesson planning? Because today is all about saving time and creating engaging lessons with ChatGPT. So I'd love to get an understanding of how much time you spend. So if you can just take a second to do that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go right to ChatGPT because everyone may not be familiar with what this tool is. This might be your first time. You might be an expert, but I don't know if you've ever done this before. So we're actually going to go to do that. So we'll give everybody another minute to answer that poll, but I would love to everyone to go, if you have ChatGPT open, we're going to do this together. So I'm actually going to put into the chat what I want you to ask ChatGPT. It's very simple. What are you, ChatGPT? Okay, so everyone's going to do that. Please use it exactly as it is. So cut and paste it in. There's a purpose to my madness, I promise. As you can see, I actually have ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version, and ChatGPT 4, which is the paid version. The paid version is $20 a month, and it has things like plugins that can read PDFs. It has something called Code Interpreter that's brand new that could do really great data analysis. But what you're going to see is actually pretty funny over here. Is like all of the ways in which I have used ChatGPT. It's got my history. And so, Paul, Paul, thank you so much for telling me that. I sent it to Dan only. So let's send it to everybody. There we go. You're gonna actually see that I was at the National Secondary Principals Association conference last week, and I actually taught principals how to do this. And what you're gonna see is I asked them, what was your least favorite thing that you did as a teacher or planning? And we have everything from classroom management, suspension letters. We have everything from like how to use it for all kinds of things. I've used it for our business, but I was testing its bias, all kinds of things. So what we're gonna do right now is we're going to take this and we're going to create a new chat. And the most important thing to know, like one of the most important things to know is that ChatGPT can remember you and remember your conversation, but only within the same chat. So we're going to use this chat for today. So if everyone can take that moment, what happens is you're going to see it answers it very quickly. This is actually a very fast model right now. And then you also see it automatically creates a name. You can change that name. You can share this prompt or you can trash it, like say that it wasn't very useful or you didn't want to keep it, you can trash it. So what I've got here is an answer. And does everyone's look like this? If you did it, do you have the exact same content? So Alice is actually going to put it into the chat. Thank you, Alice. You've read my mind. And what you're going to see is I'm going to, so we have ChatGPT 4, it's a little bit longer. Alice's is different. So is Sylvain's message. Okay, so, and then Amelia's the same. Okay, so this is the first thing I want to be clear on, is that there's something called temperature. So the reason why we're all over the world, and look at this guy, like they have a really long one from Mace, is that because of the way that the model is done, is that it had something called temperature as a level of variation. And if it was a 0, it means that everyone would get the same thing all the time. But that's not very helpful to us in terms of creativity. And so what's really important for us to understand is that every time you go in, you're going to see variation because there's going to be a higher temperature. So that means that we're going to see quite a variance of what ChatGPT is and how it responds. And so, we are going to kind of go into this as a, what is this as well? So ChatGPT is an AI language model. So we call this a large language model that was created by OpenAI. So OpenAI is the company that was started by Sam Altman. It is essentially this machine learning model, an AI model that allows you to query it, to ask it questions as if it was human. And so usually, I don't know if there's any coders or computer scientists or computer science teachers on the webinar, but what we would have to do to get something like, to get an answer out of a computer model before, is we'd have to code. We'd have to use computational thinking, we'd have to use specific syntax, but what we can do now is we can actually just ask it questions like I did right now. So that's one of the biggest changes. It is something that we've had artificial intelligence for a really long time. And so at the, sorry, just reading the chat, it's been here for a long time. If you have a phone that recognizes your face when you log into your phone, even if you've got a hat on or sunglasses, if you use autocorrect, etc., essentially what this is, the next much more advanced version of auto predict text. So what it is doing, it is predicting based on all of its training. So in this case, 175 billion parameters of data from the internet, what it thinks the answer should be. And so for this question, what are you, ChatGPT? It is providing that based on its predictive ability. So I'm also going to ask it its next question, which is let's do it right, what we're doing right now. Let's do it. How can I use ChatGPT to lesson plan as I'm going to say high school teacher. I was a high school teacher, that's why. And so what it's going to do is it's going to very quickly be able to respond different ways that it can help. So we've got research and gather information, generate creative ideas, create engaging activities, provide review and feedback, and stay up to date. So what I'm going to say is that right now, I'm going to tell you that I don't agree with ChatGPT on a couple of these things. And we're going to talk about why in a moment. It's really good at generating creative ideas. It's really good at creating engaging activities. It also can provide areas of improvement, but there are a couple of things it's not great about. Providing research and gathering information, it can often make mistakes called hallucinations because it's not actually connected to the internet. So I don't really use it to research. I also don't use it to stay up to date because the training data for ChatGPT 3.5 actually stopped in 2021. So it does not know that Taylor Swift went on tour. It doesn't know about the upcoming World Cup for women and all the kind of things that are happening because that training data stopped in September of 2021. So what we're going to do now is actually look at some best practices for how to do this. And one of the things that I think a lot about is that ChatGPT is a great thought partner. So I, as an early teacher, used to write 4-page narrative lesson plans. I mean, I wanted to be so good for my students. I would go absolutely, handwritten, the whole thing. And what I found is that over time, that was really hard to do consistently. And I kind of dropped off year over year until it became almost like the back of a napkin. And it's actually kind of hard to keep up that level of creativity. I didn't have a mentor teacher. I was the only living environment or biology teacher in my department. I didn't have partners to do this. And what I see, especially around lesson planning is this idea of having a thought partner, but it's like having like hundreds of thought partners, because it can do it with so much more data, and it can be so creative, and it never gets frustrated and it never gets bored, in the sense of like, if you use it for about an hour, it can kind of tap out, but that's a really long time to be using the tool. So for me, that thought partnership means that I can ask it questions. I can have it generate brainstorm with me. I can have it provide opportunities to improve what I've already done. And so I think that's really, really important. Especially as teachers have so much around them, like all the time, like you guys have so much going on around you all the time, that to be able to have this resource is I think, and is a superpower, and something that allows us to really focus on what matters, which is our students and our relationship with students. It's also something where we talk about 80-20. I kind of say, if you do it well, if you're a really good prompt engineer, you could do it at 95-5, which means you put in about 80% of the effort, or 20% of the effort, and you get 80% of what you want. And so it's never like, it's something that gets you so much closer to a positive outcome than what you would be doing just by Google searching, even going to Teachers Pay Teachers or other tools that takes a lot of your time to go find, vet. And sometimes you don't even realize if it's good or bad until you do it in class, and then realize that maybe this isn't actually good for my students. It doesn't engage them. It doesn't meet their needs. It's not culturally appropriate or responsive. And so what I see here is that you could do that much, much better with ChatGPT. So I see a couple of questions from Mace. What I'd say is we'll definitely have time for questions at the end. If you have a question for me that is specific, just put it in the Q&A, and I'll make sure to review those at the end, and I'll kind of watch as we go along. So right now, I just want to kind of go over like what not to do. And so we try to take a very strength-based approach here at AI for Education. But I see this happen a lot. When I talk to teachers and leaders from across not only the country, but the world, there are a couple of things that I see go wrong. The first is that people will use ChatGPT or Bard or now Claude as if it is Google. So you'll ask it a question that's very close-ended, that you expect to have a very specific answer, like what was the date of Waterloo, or provide the six stages of mitosis, or something along those lines. And what you're going to find is that you're not getting the full richness of the experience. And sometimes it actually can be quite frustrating, because it could be incorrect. It could be something that's not very useful. And in fact, Google still has value, and so does search engines in some of this work. So don't use it like Google, use it like it's a thought partner, like you're having a conversation with this app. So that's number one. The second thing I see a lot is that you expect to be able to say, build me a lesson plan with one prompt and almost no information. And then what you get out, it's not going to be perfect. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're spending the time refining, reviewing, updating, understanding, adding more information, because then you're going to come out with a really beautiful lesson plan. But if you stop at one or two prompts, it's most likely not going to be fit for purpose for your classroom, and you're going to be missing so much of the value of what ChatGPT can do for you. Along those lines, there is something called hallucination. I don't think hallucination is the best term. It actually is when the predictive model doesn't know something, but it says it anyway. So for example, it can give you a fully working URL. So you want, like, provide me a great YouTube video on X, and it will give you a very, very good URL that works, but has nothing to do with what you asked it, because it actually can't access the internet. It's not able to do that. So it's making it up. So the same thing with quotes. There have been quotes that have been that have not existed, that have been referenced to historical characters or figures. It'll create citations for papers that don't exist. It'll tell you facts that don't exist. And in a lot of cases, even if you're using a tool built on ChatGPT, it will also hallucinate. This is something that's in all foundational models. So Claude, ChatGPT, Bing, and Bard all have this problem. And so it's really, really important that you use it effectively. and that you're not expecting it to be perfect. It is not. And I just see a question from Wendy with around the idea of stopping at 1 to 2 prompts. So 1 to 2 prompts, we talk about the way that we ask questions of ChatGPT as if it is called prompt engineering. So a lot of people say, like, build me a lesson, and the next one will say, add a worksheet, and they'll kind of stop there. But what we want to do and what we're going to show you is actually how you keep prompting and keep asking questions to refine your output. So you have, it might take 5 or 6 prompts to get to exactly what you need, but the final product is going to be significantly better, which is pretty great. So number 4, giving up when a prompt doesn't work as expected. Actually, this happened if you were here with us at one of our webinars. We tried to get it to make a rubric, and it messed up hysterically like 4 or 5 times. And we had to work around that. And so sometimes the prompt doesn't work because of the way it's worded. Sometimes the bandwidth goes down and it won't be available. Sometimes it just does some funny things where it'll be like, we're going to make you a chart, and it's going to tell you it's a chart, and it's not going to be a chart. Like, that all happens. This is a brand new technology. It is something that is the worst it will ever be. This is the worst that ChatGPT will ever be. It is being refined day after day. And so it's not going to work 100% of the time. Also, so then we go to 5, which is there's underlying bias in the model itself. And so this has been seen a couple of times. And so Prabir just said about the fact that it's been trained on large amounts of internet data that has lots of errors in it. So that also can cause hallucinations, but it also causes bias. And so right now there have been many instances, and I will share one that's recent, where someone asked for something beautiful and something scary. And what it did is it used stereotypes about people as its response. And that is deeply biased. It's also biased because it's been really trained on a lot of English language content, a lot of Western content, that it has bias in terms of where it's been trained from. So you have to be really careful that you understand that all of these, the internet is not known as an unbiased place. And that's where this has been trained from. And so it's really important to understand that that's going to be part of the outputs that you get. And then final, this happens quite a bit. There was actually the instance of an engineer at Samsung who put in some proprietary information into ChatGPT, and somehow it was stored and given back to the world, and it was proprietary information. There are a lot of ways to support, keeping your content out of the training of the model, like turning off your history and training. But I always suggest that you do not include any student identifying information or even personal identifying information in your prompts, so that you can ensure that you are doing right by your students, that you are not training this model with specific information. So please absolutely do not include, if you want to create pseudonyms, letters, student IDs, but please do not include any student identifying information in your prompts. So I love that Amy and also Darren have really great prompting tools. We have a couple as well that we can do that we'll talk about. But it's time, so ours is a little bit different. So Darren and Amy's are really great. I think Prep is really simple. Raft is really simple. We do all S's. So all of them look like they have a lot in common. So we have set the scene. So in this case, this is giving like what kind of interaction do you want to have? Like, do you want it to be a master teacher? Do you want it to be an instructional designer? Do you want it to be a specific type of teacher? Doing that helps set the scene or prime the output. So we always suggest doing that. The second is to be specific. And so really be as specific as possible. And you can be specific in your first prompt, but then when you have follow-ups, it's also good to be specific when you're doing that. And we'll show you some examples live in just a moment. Be as simple in your language as possible. So really try to use, just as if you were commonly talking to someone. You don't have to use specific jargon. In fact, you don't even have to spell out standards. Like, it'll be able to, the full type of standard, it can work off of just the number or the type of standard. So you can really use it in a conversational way. Other pieces you want to structure your prompts. So actually go through and say, I'd like to see the output as a chart, or I'd like to see it as bullets, or I'd like to see this 6 things. Like, it's just really good to have that structure, because then you're having, ChatGPT is really, really good. In fact, the best on the market at being able to answer really complex prompts that have multiple levels. Claude, which is another tool that just had a new release. I just played with this today. It's not very good at being able to take those complex prompts. You have to really kind of keep asking for the same thing over and over again. But ChatGPT is actually really good at that. And then the final piece is that sharing of feedback. That wasn't great. I don't like this thing. I would love to have that. Those are the types of things that you can conversationally do with ChatGPT that are really, really wonderful. So definitely suggest, remember, we don't want to stop at 1 to 2 prompts. If you really want a good output, you keep working to refine that output. And then, okay, that's enough of me talking without showing. And so we have something called a prompt library. I don't know if any of you have used that here, but our prompt library is fully free. It's on our website. Dan's going to put that into the chat. It looks like this, but it's a whole host of prompts to get you started. If you've never used ChatGPT, we've got everything from lesson books to building slides to so responding to emails, critical thinking questions. Like, we have lots of great stuff. We created one today around actually creating ideas around lesson plans. And so the way that this is set up is that you can go and see that this is a prompt that's already been built for you that has what we just talked about. It sets the scene. It's very structured. It uses simple language, and it's going to have really a lot of detail. And so every prompt, if you don't know how to get started, has an example. And so in this case, I'm just going to cut and paste this right in. So I'm going to start a new chat just so that we can kind of see how that works again, because remember, this is going to have memory. And so I can just paste that in. And I'm just going to make sure everyone has a second to look at this really closely. You're an expert 6th grade science teacher. I want to have 3 ideas for lesson plans in our unit on science. They should be 45 minutes in length and should build on each other. The lessons should focus on plate tectonics, etc. And everyone should be appropriate for 6th grade, aligned to the NGSS. And then we want all of these things, right? Vocabulary, lesson outline, etc. So I'm going to hit this and then magic. Okay, this is my superpower for you guys right now. I don't know if someone wants to put in how long it takes you to create a lesson plan, our lesson plan ideas, it's going to be long. And so what we have here is the idea is we've got lesson plan 1, which is plate tectonics. It's got learning objectives. It's got key vocabulary. It has an outline and assessment, and then it has the standards. So this is the first one. So I'm going to actually ask it. So it didn't do all 3. So I'm going to say, can you create a series of 3 lessons from my original prompt? Because it didn't remember. So we have lesson 1. Okay. We have lesson 2. There we go. See, okay, so it didn't, this is what I'm saying, like sometimes what'll happen is it doesn't get it quite right. So in this case, it only gave me 1 of the 3. And then, what we do here is I've got plate tectonics and the Earth's crust. I've got these very basic lesson outlines and assessments. The next would be earthquakes, shaking and rumbling. And then finally, we've got volcanoes and landforms, explosive earth. First of all, I love that I'm really bad at naming. I had all of these webinars set up for you guys and had no name for the series. So I really appreciate that ChatGPT is good at naming when I'm not. But I'm going to see right now is that I don't want this to be a direct instruction type of outline. So I'm actually going to ask it to reframe these lessons with the 5E framework. And if you are here and you're a science teacher, you're going to understand the 5E framework, but it's going to be a way of deeply kind of using this framework of PBL almost, but it's engagement, exploration, explanation, elaboration, and evaluation. And what you're going to see is very quickly, it was able to do that. It kept the same names. It has the same pieces. And what I can see And I love Ashley. Yeah, as an English teacher, I love that. I mean, as a science teacher, it was always really fun to do this as a way to ensure that the student moves or more than the teacher moves. And so I'm going to say, like, okay, so the prompt for the 5Es was what I would say, Amy, is that you'd use the original prompt, and all you would do is say that do it with the 5E framework, because you can be specific. But if you want, I'm kind of showing you guys how to riff. It's almost like improv like right now. And so if I wanted to do that, I could do that with you guys. But what I want to do now is I don't actually think that the lesson plan is fulsome enough. And so you could go back to, because this is an idea generation, I could go back to our prompt library and pick like one of our lesson plan prompts, which has like everything I want to see. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use this one. And I'm going to say, so this is what generate lesson plan for lesson 1 of this series. And I don't need to do the kind of learning goals, or it's got the standards, includes the appropriate, identified NGS standard. And I'm not going to do the just questions are dead. So include the following. So teaching hook, video. Well, we're not going to do video because I just told you that video is not that great. So we're going to say a student activity to help students visualize a concept, a list of key vocabulary, student learning reading materials, an outline. I don't want to do direct instruction, so I'm actually going to do that lesson outline should be in the 5E model, and scaffolds for students who are reading below grading level. Yeah, Caitlin, I'll do that for you right now. So it's just literally the original prompt is here. So there you go. Okay, so I've done that. And so it's exploring the dynamic or exploring Earth's dynamic crust. It's got the standard, the teaching hook. So we're going to show a video clip of volcanic eruption. And this is where you could use like Bing, which is essentially ChatGPT 4 plus search. So this is what I would go is I would go to Bing and say, can I find me a good clip on volcanic eruption? So because remember, ChatGPT is not connected to the internet. In fact, even with ChatGPT 4, they actually stopped that. And so there's no like internet activity for this. So this is a great way to do that. And now what I've got is engage, show a visual representation of Earth's tectonic plates, explore. I've got our key vocabulary, our student reading models, and then we've got the engage piece. And so what I'm going to say is that it looks like it's had like a little bit of like, you know, it's got a little bit where it's kind of put engage and explore up twice. And so, you know, this is an area in which it's a little bit untraditional in the format. And so if I could even upload the format I want it to be in and ask it to do that. But for our time, I'm not going to go that far. But what I really want to point out is like, here we go. Here are some scaffolds for students reading below grade level. So simplified materials, graphic organizers or guided notes, pairing students. And so this is really great because a lot of times when we're really busy, the hardest thing to do is to be able to differentiate instruction and to bring in student interests. And so it's really important to be able to do that. And it can often be quite hard. We had a webinar yesterday with EdTech founders, including a former principal, and he was at a really high performing school, and teachers just spend an hour leveling text after they've already created all this great material. And he was able to have them, they were able to have them do that in a short period of time. And so for Winnie's question around recommended video links and those types of things, you do not use ChatGPT for that. Remember, it's not connected to the internet. What I would do is I would go to Bing, which is, and ask for those resources, which will give you that live search capacity. So I'm also going to show you guys how to think about like exploring this even more. And so if you know me, you know that one of the reasons why I started AI for Education is that I'm a former teacher. I also have helped create a company that had 200 courses in 20 months and where we had 600 rubrics. And I was the person that either wrote them or I was the one that reviewed them. And so rubrics are very, very tricky. And so what I really, like, the first one I ever did was build me a rubric. And so it was actually the first prompt I ever did. We have the prompt library that you can go back and use, but I'm just going to do it straight. So I'm going to say provide a rubric for this is a student posters for this lesson, and format it in a table. Amy, if you're having trouble copying the prompts, it's just in the prompt library, so you can do that. So just if you go to our prompt library, which Dan will put back up, it's just that lesson plan generator. Dan, if you don't mind sharing that one for Amy. There we go. Ta-da! This is like, I mean, I'm so excited still. I don't know why I get so excited. I guess when you're a teacher or you're a instructional designer, you never forget the pain. I remember the pain of trying to say mostly, explains, limited, some. Like, if you remember that, give me like a thumbs up or something. Like, I remember this so much. But what it's done is it's given me a rubric. It has content accuracy. Wendy remembers. Oh man, I still have visceral, like, I still remember this. Organization and visual appeal, clarity of explanations and examples, grammar, spelling, and presentation skills. And so what I want to do though is I actually want to change a couple of things. So I want, can you create this as a 5-level criteria, because we use that at my school, and provide the instructions for students for this activity that leads into this rubric. So what I've done though, Carolina, you and me, so what you're going to see though is that it didn't give me a 5-level criteria, because what it's doing is it probably gave me an additional piece. So I'm going to have to fix it, because remember, it's not going to be perfect. And so yes, Ross, exactly. And then the instructions for the activity in your small groups. Here's all this information, and then you can do it from here. So I'm going to say there are still only 4 criteria. 4 levels of proficiency, make it 5. There we go. So there we've got the 5. And Christy, like, I think that one of the things about being able to like find the formatting, there are definitely some things that could be better. There is this share feature, and there's also this like, I don't know if you've used the clipboard piece, but it should be like, there's some things that make this better. And so Darren and everyone that's late, first of all, thank you so much for joining so late. I really appreciate you. I know sleep is really important. We will have a recording of this tomorrow. So please look out for that, and please get some sleep. I'm just so glad you could join for even a short period of time. And so what we see here is that, like, it's just that way to keep working towards what you need. And so in the case of like going ahead, does anybody want me to do something? Put something in chat. What would you like to see us do? Like, is there something specific that you really don't like for planning? Is there something that you'd like to see this changed into? Does someone just want to throw me some stuff and we can do it live together? Oh, okay. So sure. Can you unpack the NGSS standards related to this topic? So there we go. So we have this topic. So we just use this one. So we're unpacking the standard. I love how everyone's telling me what time it is. Oh goodness, you guys are amazing. I'm like, we'll keep doing these webinars, but we'll do them in times that actually work better for everybody. I promise. And so, but here's that unpacking the standard. And so we've got the construct an explanation based on evidence. Then it even goes further, alignment to the lesson. So how does this actually align to the lesson that was created? And so I've got really great things. So we're going to keep going. And so as far as Rhonda asked about the SQL code, remember this is what it's creating for you is going to be still like computer science, like it's still going to be in computer code. So it does SQL. If you ask it to create a Venn diagram, it's going to create something that's kind of funky. Like it's not going to be something that you can compare and contrast. I mean, you could just cut and paste because it's doing it within the framework of the capabilities of the system. There are new amazing things coming where we're going to be able to speak into ChatGPT and other tools. You're going to be able, you already can upload almost a full book into Bard and to Claude. You can do uploads of images, and it can read images and data. Those are all coming. And so, and already can do. So like, it's just the way that like, we're still, remember, we're at the very early stages of this. Oh my God, I love like all the things. Okay, so for PowerPoint slides, I'm gonna pick that one out. So we have a prompt for this, but again, I'm just gonna do the slide with you all because we're already kind of in it. Create the content or slides for this lesson that include, and I'm gonna say descriptions of the images for each slide. And the reason why I'm doing that is that it's not going to remember, it can't connect to the internet, so it can't give me those images, but it's going to say this is the image, show an image depicting Earth's tectonic plates and their boundaries, and then this is a description for each slide. And so what you can do is, there at one point you could do like VBA code. It doesn't work that well, which is where you could like go and actually put it into PowerPoint. So it's still a bit manual. There are tons of good tools that are being developed. None of them are like too amazing right now, but those are coming, I think, in probably the next 3 to 6 months. You're going to be able to see like so much better like content, but this is a great way, like you still have to think about the slides. And so, so Christy says, Curapod, I met their founders, they're really great. I think that they're going to see so many more advancements in that over the next 6 months. Okay, so Tim has a good question. And Vanna, I'm so glad that this has been helpful. So if you could explain more on how to have AI create innovative lessons. Anytime I prompted with innovative creative, it gives very basic strategies. Okay, so this is where I would say that like, I actually like one of my very favorite things that we have in terms of like starting with brainstorming, I think really helps to get to the creativity. So I like this prompt, Tim, to get started, which is our Dan can pop this one in the chat, but this is our lesson hooks one. So the reason why I like this one is because it is taking into, we talked about innovative, it's taking into account students' interests. And so when we think about getting creative, if we add our student interest into this, then it'd be great. So in this case, it's a life sciences class. I'm actually going to change it up because we've done a lot of science stuff, but we're going to do in my history class. And the activity should be 5 to 10 minutes long. My students love, I'm going to say video games. Well, I like fashion and I'm going to say cooking shows. I don't know. And so what we have here is that for Tim, like, it's going to really quickly give me a lot of like really interesting, like kind of choose your own adventure pieces. And I actually use this in my own development of PD lessons because it's a really good way to start. And if you start with the brainstorming, it does a lot better job of getting creative because what you're doing is you're starting at a much smaller place, right? You're starting at the idea, the kernel in here, and then you can prompt it to create something more creative in terms of the full lesson. So I've really enjoyed some of these. So a recycled chef's challenge where students have to like create unique dishes. Oh yeah, like this is really interesting. That's probably not quite right, but what you can say is maybe you do this one where you think about having it reframe it so that it's students actually using food that would go to waste, for example, but trash to treasure art, recycling pledge wall, fashion sketches, recycling relay fashion challenge. And one of the things I really like about this is that I could probably come up with some of these, and especially if I was having a really good conversation with colleagues that are creative. But to be able to do this, because I can say, create 10 more. And it's going to give me 10 more. And to be able to do this with almost no cognitive load, it is really, really fascinating to see like how like much faster I can get to something better. So for example, I can, as someone that does these wonderful, like not wonderful, but I try to do good, lessons and workshops and PD, I'm able to do it much faster because I'm starting at a place of power almost. Like I have this ability to have something help me do this and where I'm able to partner and refine, which I think is really, really great. And so I think that, what I say is I always just want to really, really dive in like keeping and trying. Like, I think that this is what is so great, is that you keep going and you keep creating better and better things. And sometimes like it's not going to be perfect, because remember, this has not been designed for schools necessarily. It's not fit for purpose, but there are all kinds of new tools that are being developed every day, specifically around lesson planning. And what I would say is that you absolutely can use Curipod. You can use Magic School, you could use Almanac. There are tons of great ones out there. But I think that getting started, because a lot of your students will be using ChatGPT, that this is a great way to get started. And so, for example, like I can do everything here, and it also allows me to have control. And so we're kind of coming up on time. And so what I'm going to say is I'm going to do something where I want to see some other possibilities. And so I want to create a formative assessment, a 10-item quiz with a clean copy for students, and a copy with the key, and 5 exit ticket questions. And so that's pretty a lot. That's a lot around assessment. And so what you're going to see is that here's this quiz. This is, and they're actually just going to use it as, there's a student copy. And so it provides the actual answers, which is great. And then it's got exit ticket questions. And so what you can say is that, like, now create a version for my advanced students. And so what it should do is it should be able to create a more, in this case, what you can see is that this is actually going to move from multiple choice to open-ended questions. So that's definitely a clear leveling up. It gives you the answers that you would want to see. And then it also, and so it's this idea to be able to really take this and supercharge it. And so, you know, again, it's not perfect. You have to watch out for hallucinations. You have to watch out for bias. It may not be the most creative, but it definitely is something that gets you started. So we're gonna so we're kind of coming up on time. And so what I'm gonna say is, I know that people potentially have to leave, but I want to give you kind of a couple of things. Those of you that want to stay and hang out and have some questions, we'll talk about those until the top of the hour. But these are the things I'd love to keep you guys kind of really, really thoughtful around, which is this idea of, sorry, one second, to try again, like we just showed you. Like, you can regenerate the response, you can change your language, you can add more options. You could ask ChatGPT for help. Like, you know, Tim was asking, how do you make this more creative? But like, you could do that, make this way, but like, you can actually have it, you could upload your own lesson and then ask it to riff on it, to give you feedback, to create lessons like it. There's a lot that you can do. Also, trust your instincts. And there was a question in the chat around those that are getting started. You know, we really at this stage, like, having some pedagogical knowledge is really important. There are other tools that are being designed that are more end-to-end. But what I would say is that, like, just, you know, you can try these things, but like, I would say that they're like the same thing with you know, using something offline. You always have to use your own judgment. Like, none of this is going to be perfect. So you need to make sure that you're like really reflecting and making sure this works for your classroom, your demographic, your student ages, interests, and it's going to get better and better at that. And then finally, think outside the box, take advantage, get crazy. I've seen some really amazing things. If you're part of the Facebook prompt engineering, the ChatGPT for teachers group, you'll see like some really great things around teachers getting super, super creative and, you know, having, you know, really cool historical chats, creating, you know, things like raps to teach certain things, like, you know, creating songs with Code Interpreter now, which is the paid version. You can create simple games with language. There's all kinds of cool things you can do. So what we hope to do is that you take this as a primer, as a starting place, and actually bring this to your classroom. And so we have a couple ways we're going to do this. One of the cool things is that we have our first course that is going to be launched tomorrow, which goes deeper into this and even goes into ethics. It goes into specific prompting, not just for planning, but for introducing to students around your administrative work, et cetera. That's going to be fully free if you were here today. So we hope to have that something that we share tomorrow. And we'd love for you to like hang out and connect. I met so many cool people through this process. I answer every single question that I get and try to. And so please reach out and let's, like, I'm really in this because I believe in the power of generative AI in a responsible manner that can really make your lives easier. So we're going to stay to the top of the hour. And if you have some time to do the feedback form, and yes, sorry, Jen, it is a lot of information. What I would say is that that course is going to be at your own pace. And so absolutely, like, just know that this is an overview, but really love the feedback. And I'm just going to spend some time answering some questions. I see. Okay, so I'm going to say the first question I'm going to answer, I'm just going to do from the chat. There have been some questions about, I'm going to come off of share so you guys can see me. There have been some questions around copyright. So that is a huge, huge question that has not fully been played out because it's something that is being adjudicated right now. If you know Sarah Silverman, she's actually sued OpenAI around the use of her. She's essentially that they trained on her books. And so there are lots of questions around the like copyright infringement and plagiarism of these tools. It has been scraped on across the whole internet, and Stable Diffusion, which is images, has admitted in front of Congress that they did not pay for or get permission for any of the images that they use to train their model. So there are going to be enormous kind of consequences, and there's going to be regulations that are going to come. What I would suggest, and I always suggest, is that I'm very clear when I use ChatGPT, and I like to cite it the same way that I want my students to cite it. And so it's really important to like know that this is something that is changing. And we talk about responsible adoption. So we talk about this idea of like being able to do this in a way in which you're doing your best, you're using it in safe ways as much as possible, but you know that there are risks associated with hallucinations, with bias, but also with plagiarism. So I just think that like everything needs to be taken, with balance because we are so early in this journey. So it's a really great question. And so we have some other great questions. Let's see. So Paul asked, ChatGPT 4 with plugins will connect to the internet, but Bing has been disabled, Paul. I don't know if it's been re-enabled, but because of the copyright issues, it's actually been disabled. So right now you cannot use, like Bing is built on ChatGPT 4. So that's my suggestion if you want to be connected to the internet. But the GPT 4 with plugins does not have access to the internet right now. So that's one question. For Manish, the benefits of the paid version, it absolutely has some plugins that allow you to reference PDFs, where it can read a PDF, it can go into YouTube, it can provide citations or scholarly work, it can do diagrams. I think that GPT-4, I use it because it has higher processing power. I use it because of Code Interpreter, which is brand new, which can actually do math. Because if you've has anybody here tried to get ChatGPT to give you a word count or to do basic math? And what you're going to find is that like it can't, and it's because it doesn't do math. It just approximates what you think math is or what it thinks math is. And so I like to use it for being able to kind of have like Code Interpreter allows you to upload like data and have it, be able to be referenced and analyzed. But I think that there are other tools that do that quite well, like Claude, you can upload, and Bing and Bard, you can upload images now, like PDFs, without having to use a paid version. And I really suggest right now, if you don't have to pay for anything because it's so new and unreliable, then I would suggest not doing that. So use what's free right now, absolutely. So next is, we will definitely send the prompt library to everybody afterwards. For a PE lesson, like what I would say is that we can definitely create one, but I would just use the prompt library and just change the topic for the lesson plan for PE. And then you can say what standards you'd like and what other pieces that you'd like to be a part of it. As far as, keep looking. And for those of you that thought this was really fast, I do apologize. We're trying to do a lot in a little bit of time. And so what I suggest is like our course will hopefully be much more structured. You can go at your own pace. And I apologize if it's too fast, but we want these to be overviews and these live sessions. And then you have the ability to deep dive on your own or with support through us. And so, you know, I think that like what we really want to happen is that these are just places for you to start to see the power and the possibility. And so, you know, when we do this, everything is changing quite quickly. There's actually a question in the chat around the differences between 3.5, 4, and being, and it's moving so quickly. And so one of the things that I suggest is if you find something you like if you like ChatGPT, if you like a free tool like or Curapod, if you like Bing, if you like Bard, if you like Claude, I would stick with it and use that and get familiar with it, and then use other resources tactically, because in 6 months the world's going to change again. And when I say that is like you might not have to do prompts anymore. You might just be able to hit a button. So for example, already in Google, they have released this ability to do kind of 5 things that you want to do. Like you can shorten something, you can make it longer, you can change the tone. And so these are like more and more are there going to be intuitive systems that that are really here to kind of help you do this work. So while right now you have to kind of have those ability to identify how to use prompt engineering correctly and how to interact and how to identify bias, hallucination, and appropriate resources, is that's going to become more and more a part of these systems as you go. And so we have just, I'm going to take like 2 minutes to answer 2 more questions, if that's okay. So I've got one from Ross. And so the best AI tools for Google Slides, best link to Google Classroom. I don't know anything, like there are a lot of different tools out there. I think most of them are still they have the same issues that ChatGPT has, because they're built on ChatGPT and other models. So there's nothing that I would say right now that I feel really confident in to suggest, but I will say that we will continue to share resources as we go. So when I see something that's good for you all, we'll definitely share it. Let's see any more. I see something about if there is, getting an error when submitting prompts. Sometimes it's your bandwidth, sometimes it's the bandwidth of ChatGPT. It tends to work better on your phone. So Teresa, if you're using a VPN, it tends to work better on your phone. So maybe use that as an opportunity as well. Let's keep going. Okay, so Angel, ideas for convincing your school not to block ChatGPT for teachers. And so what I would say is that it's going to get harder and harder to block these things. We have some resources that we will be publishing very soon around AI policies and decision-making. We're actually working with schools and districts on that because we do not want it to be blocked. We want it to be responsibly adopted. And so, but what I would say, Angel, is what we've seen to be effective is to have conversations with not just your school leaders, but students and like a cross-functional team, and identify appropriate ways in which ChatGPT can be used, and then present that so that it's something that shows that it's going to be used for some things that are really appropriate, but not for others. And so that's been effective. But what I would say is that very soon, when generative AI tools are released into Google and to Microsoft and to, there's going to be everywhere. It's going to be very, very hard to block anything because it's going to be in everything that we do within the next year. Let's see, so William asked a good question. Have you heard of AI cannibalism? So this is interesting. So AI cannibalism is this idea that the AI tools get worse because they're like a lot of reasons, but there was just William out, like if you find me on LinkedIn, I will send you this, but Ethan Malik, who's amazing he's at UPenn, he put up something recently because there's been this talk that actually 3.5 has gotten better while 4, the paid version, has gotten worse. And they were able to show some examples in which it has gotten worse for some reasoning tasks. So I think there is some truth to that. And so I would say, like William, if you're still here, just like find me on LinkedIn and I'll share that with you. For Kevin, about Conmigo. So Conmigo is really interesting. I think Conmigo also is built on ChatGPT. It has the same issues around hallucination bias, and it is not safe in the terms of you can ask it questions like compare and contrast different types of weapons that a student can subvert in a way that is negative and or potentially dangerous. And so they still have a lot to work out. I advocate strongly, unless you absolutely love something, that you hold off on paying just yet for anything. I believe that Conmigo will be super cool, and I am working directly with organizations literally right now around personalization and tutoring, but they're not quite there yet in terms of like being fully fit for purpose. So I just suggest like being very cautious, and then, hopefully within the next 6 to 8 months, things will get much, much better. And then I would suggest paying where appropriate. And then David, it's good to see you, David, but the technology is good between off-the-shelf lessons and then too extreme. And I think that's right. I think that if you get really kind of comfortable with it and you're even using your own lessons as a starting place, you really can get to a place where you can create some really cool stuff. I get really excited. One of my favorite things so far is like showing someone how to do this live. I literally ask, what is your least favorite task? And we do it together, and I have everything from like, someone thinking really hard to like hands up, mouth open, this is changing my life. So I think that there is that value here that we want you to be able to do. And I'm going to answer just one more question. Winners are, okay, so Wendy asked if I'm available for questions offline. Find me on LinkedIn, say hello. Please, absolutely, let's have a conversation. It's my pleasure. Like AI for education is so yeah. So I'll put on LinkedIn. I'm Amanda Bickerstaff, and I think Dan could probably put that in the channel. But the reason why we created AI for education is to help teachers like you, educators like you, do this work and find a path towards doing, making things easier so you can focus on what's happening in the classroom with your students. So I'm always happy to answer questions. We hope this is helpful. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for the people that have stayed over the time. I love this, and I love you all for being here as part of this. And thank you for being so active in the chat. It just really is a pleasure. And I just hope everyone has a great night, morning, middle of the night, wherever you are. Thank you so much for coming. And I hope this has been helpful. Thanks, everybody.